Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So good to have you here today, episode 2273 of the Cabral Concept, where we are going to be breaking down what exactly does organic meat versus grain-fed versus grass-fed versus organic grass-fed. What does all that mean, and how does free range play into all of this as well? So I hope that by the end of today's show, and it won't be a long one at all, is that you are no longer thoroughly confused when you're at the meat market and trying to figure out what is the best one for myself and my family in terms of eating the healthiest meat available. Now, of course, if you are vegan and you're not eating meat, I totally understand. That is your choice, and we fully support you here as well. But especially if you're an integrative health practitioner or you want to learn more about it, I think these things are still really important to learn as well, because part of it has to do with how the animal is living, the quarters that it's in, and so much more. So I want to just take it from the top, break it down section by section, and actually teach you by the end of this show, without a doubt, the healthiest based meat that you can consume. So let's get right into it. The first and foremost is and we're going to be talking about beef here today. Not chicken, not fish. We can do that on another show. But when we're looking at beef, cows in general, we're saying, well, what's the most common type of beef out there? Well, the most common type of beef out there is grain-fed. So if you're at a restaurant, or if you're anywhere and it doesn't say anything about the beef and it just says like porterhouse or filet or ribeye or whatever, it's grain-fed. So like bottom line is 90+%, I would say, of meat is going to be grain-fed. So what does that mean? Well, grain-fed means that cow is fed corn, wheat, soy, any other grains, and oftentimes, I know this sounds crazy, I wrote about it in the Rain Barrel Effect way back, not way back, but a couple of years ago. They're actually fed Skittles and anything with lots of calories. And you might say, well, that sounds kind of crazy. Why would they give a cow all of these different things? Like a cow in the wild is not going to be eating a lot of wheat, soy, corn, other grains. It's going to be grazing, right? It's going to be roaming around the pastures, which we'll talk about in a moment. Well, the difference is that farmers get paid when they are able to sell that cow for meat, and they also get paid based on how much meat it yields. So how quickly they can get it up to weight, and also how much does it weigh in total? Well, if you feed an animal all of this grain, it's going to gain a lot more weight. Now, there are upsides and downsides, right? So if you're looking to sell it for the most possible price, well, you're going to get that cow to be somewhere around 1,400, 1,500, 1,600 or so pounds, right? So that animal then is then slaughtered and you're getting your meats out of it. Now, what are they getting? Well, you're going to get somewhere around like 800 to 900 pounds of meat from that animal. So they're getting paid on the actual meat that they sell. So again, for their business model, they want to fatten up the cows. That's really what they're looking to do. The problem is this: most grain-fed beef is coming from concentrated animal feeding operations. I'm sure you've seen this before. It's called CAFO, right? CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operations. And these are not just what's called animal feeding operations, but it's 1,000 plus animals in one area that are in poor living conditions, fed from massive troughs that where more than 50% of all the antibiotics basically go to these animals to keep them alive because they're being fed deplorable food. They're living in their own waste. It's horrifying. It's horrifying for the environment. It's horrifying for the animals. And it's horrifying for the end consumer that doesn't even know that they're consuming animals that have lived in this type of just absolute deplorable situations and filth. Plus, the grain that they are consuming and all of the soy and all of these things is raising their estrogen levels. It's raising their potentially cortisol levels from the environment that they're in. It's definitely raising its inflammation. And the omega-6s can be anywhere from 10 to 1 to 20 to 1. When ideally for a regular grass-fed based animal, it's around about a 3 to 1. So, and again, the more omega-6s, the more polyunsaturated fats or the arachidonic acid, the more inflammation you're essentially consuming. So it's a radical difference. It's not what we want to be consuming for our meat. It's really not. It's one of the worst things that you can do for your body. It really is. And I know a lot of people out there trying to eat a lot of protein to change their body. I just can't recommend it. It's just so bad. Not today, not tomorrow, of course, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now of doing that day in and day out. It's really bad for your health. I can't say it any other way. Okay, so grain-fed beef, very, very sparingly. If you're going to consume it, very sparingly. It's not good for your health. However, I will say this. People largely believe that it is the tastiest out of all of them. Why would that be? Well, here's why. The animal has far more fat, okay? And it also is consuming grains and other things like that have more of maybe a sweeter and it's a little bit more tender than grass-fed, where it might taste then a little bit more grassy, the meat itself. And it definitely doesn't have as much fat. And if it doesn't have as much fat, then it's not as flavorful and tender. The trade-off is your health, right? So I think it's not a good trade-off. It's really not. So the next category then is grass-fed. Okay, I already gave a little bit of more information about grass-fed, but grass-fed, it means no grain. Okay, so if the animal is grass-fed, it is grazing outside in the grass, eating all of the grass in its fenced-in area or not fenced-in area. That is what it's consuming. Now, it's sometimes called pasture-raised beef or pastured beef, pastured meat. They do the same thing for chicken, but it means that it's not always just grass, right? So the cow is grazing and it's eating grass and it's eating some herbs and it's eating some insects. It's eating whatever's there as it's eating and grazing through the pasture, right? So grass-fed, pastured, pretty much one and the same. I mean, it really is. And the difference then is that you're going to have a dramatic difference in the health of the animal. These animals, if they're doing grass-fed, they aren't typically giving them the antibiotics and the recombinant bovine growth hormone and the estrogen that they're giving grain-fed animals. Again, you're consuming that when you eat that meat. I can't recommend eating it at all. I just would not eat grain-fed meat. If that is the only option you have, I would go for some other option. Because in the long run, it is not leading to good health. It's not. It's just the opposite. It's completely the opposite. So now you take a grain-fed meat, though, and it's dramatically different. Meaning that, okay, let's say it's 18 to 1, 20 to 1, which a lot of grain-fed meats are. Now you're down to 3 to 1. You're at about a 3 to 1 for a grass-fed or pasture-fed meat. That is dramatically different for omega-6s to omega-3s. So it's far more anti-inflammatory, at least non-inflammatory, than its counterpart. So really, really important to look at. We're not going to get into radiation of the meat. We're not going to get into how it's transported today. I just wanted to go through how the animal is actually raised. Because grass-fed for sure, there's one more type that's better. I'm going to share it in just a moment. But you want your animal eating what it would naturally in nature. So let me repeat that. Whatever you consume, you want it to consume what it would naturally do in nature. A cow would not naturally graze on corn, soy, Skittles, wheat, and all these other products in nature. It would walk around and eat grass and whatever's in the grass all day long, right? You've probably seen cows, hopefully like real cows on real farms grazing all day, right? That's what you're looking at. All right. So what's the next type though? Well, there's actually grass-fed, but it's grain finished. So you actually have to ask now, is this grass-fed green finished or grass finished as well? So green is another way of saying like it's pastured. I know it gets super confusing, but basically, is this 100% pastured meat? Is this 100% grass-fed meat? One and the same, okay? So this is important. Why is that important? Because sometimes an animal will be grass-fed, but they don't always have to state that it was grain finished. Why would a farmer, or more typically, a larger animal feeding operation, grain finish an animal? Well, the reason is it can add a couple hundred extra pounds. So a grass-fed cow is not going to have the same level of fat than a grain-fed one is. They just don't add as much fat, body fat. Like literally, they don't. I mean, when I was overseas, and whether I was in Europe in some parts or I was in India, I mean, you're not looking at grain-fed animals. They're not. They're just literally farm animals. You can see their ribs, like it's an animal, like from the wild. And it's just dramatically different also in terms of the antioxidants they produce. So what I'm saying is this. A farmer, though, again, if they're getting paid on this and they can add a couple hundred extra pounds of weight where they might get 45% or so of that as actual meat, well, then that's oftentimes what they do. But also, again, it goes back to flavor. People like that extra fat and the tenderness and the mouth flavor of grain-fed beef. So basically, they're grass-fed, and then all of a sudden, the last maybe couple months or 6 months, then they're grain-finished. Not as bad as fully grain-finished, but certainly not as good as grass-fed or pasture-fed, or pasture-raised, all right? Really, really important to note that difference. Now, there is something that will throw you off to even a little bit more of a greater level, and that's free range. Now, that's typically said more with chickens than it is cows, all right? So what's the difference? Well, most cows are always kept outside. I shouldn't say always and everyone, but most are. Chickens, yeah, you keep them inside. Again, like not healthy chickens, but these big, again, massive feeding operations, they're inside, right? Hundreds under one roof. So that's certainly not healthy. We know that. But then they say, well, these are free-range birds or free-range cows. What does that really mean? It sounds great, right? It sounds great. No, all it means is that at some point, they open the door to the chicken coop or they open the door for the cows to go outside. That's what it means. It doesn't mean they went outside, or it doesn't tell you how long they went outside. Maybe it was for 30 minutes. Maybe it was for an hour. But it just says, like, at some point, these animals went outside, or they at least had the opportunity to. That's free range. So don't think free range is like this amazing thing. Oh, these eggs are free range. Not so great, right? Pastured, much better. That means the birds or cows, they're outside grazing on that pasture as close to they would be in nature, right? Pretty close. Okay, so really, really important to understand that part to it. Free range is not at the top. Now, the last part is this. Organic. You might say, oh, well, this beef is organic. 2 caveats to that. Organic can simply mean they've fed these cows or chickens organic corn, organic soy, organic wheat, organic whatever they want, right? So certainly better than GMO, because those grain-fed animals are certainly getting GMO corn, right? That's the cheapest way. Easy, right? Increases estrogen levels. What happens when you increase estrogen levels? You add more body fat. I mean, that's literally what they are getting these animals to do. They're not, these are scientists that have been paid to figure out how do we add the most weight to this animal. And it's deplorable. A lot of these animals can't even stand in these huge concentrated animal feeding operations, right? Not good. So what is organic does not necessarily mean this is good. If you see organic milk, if you see organic beef, no, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. It means that animal got better than non-organic, but they're still getting grain. They're getting organic grain, organic beans, soybeans, etc. So it doesn't mean better. Grass-fed is still better. But what's better than grass-fed? Well, organic grass-fed and grass-finished is the pinnacle. So that's it. And I know that it has to get crazier every year, but here's the thing. The reason is that someone just finds a way around the rules and regulations so that they come up with a new name for it. Like, that's literally the bottom line. It's like, how can we fool the people now? Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to now call it grass-fed, but maybe the last 6 months we'll feed it grain. But the majority of its life was grass-fed. You have to be really careful. Again, and I'll share my personal advice in just a moment, but why organic grass-fed? Well, if it's organic grass-fed, it means the grass itself was not sprayed with pesticide. That's a good thing. We talked about yesterday, right? On yesterday's show. Hopefully you checked that out. Pesticides, herbicides, the Clean 15, Dirty Dozen. Definitely check that out. That was episode 2271. Today's episode, that was 2272. Today's episode 2273. StephenCabral.com/2273. I'll be giving you a couple of links today on the show. So definitely check this out for local grass-fed farms as well. All right. So now that you know that if you can, not every farm is going to be organic grass-fed. Grass-fed is great if you know your farmer. So let me give you a couple takeaways here. Grass-fed is the best, without a doubt. Pasture-fed, one and the same, again. But the way that you really know, and I talked about this yesterday a lot on the show, is that you, whenever possible, want to buy locally. Whenever possible. You really do. So I would say that 90% of all of the meat that my family eats is purchased within the animals live within the same state. We'll put it that way, right? So why do we do that? It's still, and by the way, we purchase it frozen. So why is that done? The reason it's done is that it comes from one farm. We know that the animals, how they were raised. We can actually go to that farm if we choose to, although over the last 2 years, they've actually banned a lot of these farms from having people on. I don't want to get into the weeds on that, but that's not good for these farmers, right? But regardless, if you know the farm that it's coming from, you can go to that farm and you can actually speak with the farmer. We get ours at farmers markets, and we also get deliveries. There are pickup spots or deliveries every 2 weeks in most states. And that means you can support your local farmer. You can actually ask them, do you use antibiotics? And all the farms that we work don't use antibiotics. They will use antibiotics as a last resort if they have to for some type of infection, which, by the way, makes sense. You would do it for humans as well. But then they say they will not sell that meat for at least 6 months post-antibiotics. That's trustworthy. Like, that makes sense. I would do the same if I was a farmer, right? Then we ask, what about recombinant bovine growth hormone? What about estrogen? They say, nope, never. Like, it's listed on their website. And then I say, okay, well, do you spray the grass with they're eating? Like, no, we don't spray the grass. But some of the farmers that we work with, they are not certified organic. And I just ask them, listen, are you certified organic? They say, no, the expense is just too great for us. We're small farmers. This is what we do. And I say, acceptable. Like, that's acceptable to me because I know how expensive and the red tape that comes with all these different things. So what I would do is I would, again, get to know your local farmers. It's worth it. You're going to get it at a less expensive price than the grocery food store. You directly support local farmers and you're getting the best quality meat available. So if you're someone that does eat some meat, whether, again, you can kind of use these same things for chicken and other things, but I just gave you today beef. If you're someone that eats burgers, or you're someone that eats any type of beef, or your family drinks milk or whatever it might be, this is what you want to look for. You really do. I believe it's so imperative, especially with red meat. I think red meat can be one of the most detrimental if you are getting it grain-fed because it's so inflammatory. There's a decent amount of arachidonic acid. We'll probably talk eggs and other things another day. And I think it's one that you want to be cognizant of. You really do. Especially people, like, organ meat is becoming more and more popular. Please don't buy organ meat from grain-fed animals. These are not healthy organs, and so you have to be really careful as well. So hopefully today's show was helpful. If I missed anything, if you have any questions, always let me know. Leave the comments right here on YouTube. Please feel free to like and subscribe. We really do appreciate our growing YouTube following. We just started here about a year ago, and it's been great to connect with so many people on YouTube. And then, of course, on Instagram, you can leave your comments as well. I definitely check them all out. I appreciate it. Take care. And as I always say, if this information was helpful, share it, right? This information is meant to be shared. We need to get it out. This is not something the media, of course, would ever share with anyone. All right, take care, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow. Take care. Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my Health Results Accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stevencabral.com/courses.